Following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, magic stairs, a merry-go-round, an arcade, a photo booth, and a cheesy Halloween store.
And a kiss.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This is podcast episode number 279. This week we're going to be covering episode 7 of The Last of Us. Title of the episode is Left Behind. So, what are your thoughts on Left Behind? Did I go first? Did you go first last week? Should really mark this down, or else.
Yeah, you think we would know? Right. I actually went first last time, so you get to start us off.
Okay, so we were chatting right before we started recording, and I would say I really, really like this episode. I think it's exactly the kind of slow burn we needed after there's been, pretty much every episode has had at least one pocket of like action of some kind, whether there's infected or not. And the last episode ended on like a total cliffhanger, and you don't know what's going to happen to Joel. And as frustrating as it is, you sort of have to slow down and tell like a slow story. And I really, really like this one. It was nice to have a story that like took its time. It was only the two people. It took place in like a single location. They were moving around inside that mall, but the mall itself was like, 90% of the episode. Mm-hmm. And that alone was really interesting, just the set piece of the mall, sort of living through that stuff. But yeah, I really, really liked the episode. I knew, in your heart, certain things that are going to happen a certain way. And we also knew from Ellie's story that we knew certain things were going to happen there. But it made it so, so sad at the end and all of that. But it was just really well done, really well put together, really sort of made you rooting for these, young kids that, just have no chance pretty much. So hooray, very uplifting. They've been very good at that so far. So how about you? What did you think of Left Behind?
Well, first of all, when it was first starting up, I was really pissed off at the producers of this show because the next part of the story of after Joel falls off the horse is so freaking awesome. And when they first announced this show, this next part that's coming up was the first thing I thought of, like, oh my God, how are they going to do that?
Ooh.
And so I was all psyched up, like we kind of talked about last week, like maybe they'll do like a split episode where we show present day Ellie and flashback Ellie. Mm-hmm. And we didn't, other than the very beginning and the very end. Right. And so that really annoyed me. I'm not going to lie. And so, yeah. But then when I, kind of got over my, they're not going to freaking do it,
Yeah.
And just said, okay, fine. And I just I watched the episode for what it was. It's amazeballs, mostly because it is basically it's the bonus, like, smaller game that comes with the video game. Mm-hmm. And it's even called The Last of Us Left Behind. So, this is a direct nod to it. And the things that they pulled over that are identical are fantastic. And there's all kinds of Easter eggs in this episode. And so, as a game player of this universe, it was amazing. And it really, did a really good job of going, hey, check this out. Or, you know what this is, and all that, which was great. And so I really like this episode a lot. There's so much great stuff in here. And yeah, you're right. It was definitely a slower episode, but I think that's good because, again, I know what the next part is.
Right.
And I think that this is good. And I also think what you said last week was really spot on and smart in that they didn't want to show us what happened to Joel in the scenes for last week.
Yeah.
And you don't want to see Joel running around shooting people because it's like, well, clearly he survived, right? Clearly he's okay. And
right.
so to make that ambiguous and make us go, well, what happened to Joel? They did this sort of flashback episode. And so then that gives them stuff to promote and show us leading up to it without giving away the whole shebang. So it makes total sense. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I really enjoyed this episode a lot.
Yeah, and I think we debated last week because we knew, like you just said, that there were no scenes that showed Joel in the next episode, and we did the debate where we said, it could be half this, half that. They could show a little bit of Joel, and I think the amount of Joel that they did show was so impactful, and we'll go through a lot of the details and how it felt, but I think it was so impactful, and it was just the right amount so that it didn't feel like we'd been dumpstered, as it were. we knew at this entire episode, while they were slowing it down for Ellie and telling this story, you also knew exactly where Joel stood. There was no
he was laying down, but yeah.
I mean technically yes. So it's not like you knew where his health was at, where he was feeling, where he was physically, it's not like on the side of a road and she ran off to try and find help,
Right.
He's on some type of sheltered area. She put him on like a couch cushion or something. And he's, yes, he's still bleeding out and whatever, but it's, he's in this precarious situation. He's still alive. And then boom, then we go to this other story. And then you have that tension of that in the back of your mind. And then it sort of seeps away. You sort of forget about Joel for a little while, and then you get back to Joel. And I thought that the way that they did that, they sort of bookended the episode with the two. It helped sort of satiate that brain of like, well, you can't not tell me what's going on with Joel. So they gave you a little taste of that. Mm-hmm. But they didn't give you too much. They still kept it's still slightly ambiguous, but you at least know where he is and what sort of medical state he's in the entire time that you're doing this whole Ellie sort of flashback moment.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
All right, so let's talk about our individual points in the episode. Let's get a little bit of a description of what we're expecting in this episode, if you want to go ahead and handle that. And then we'll move on.
Sounds like a plan.
I love it.
All right, so this is The Last of Us episode 1.7, and as you said, it is entitled Left Behind. And the description that we have is very sparse, but it is as follows. As Joel fights to survive, Ellie looks back on the night that changed everything.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. And, of course, we're talking about the season finale of season 4 of Lost. No, we're not. But, I mean, that was a great one. But anyway, you know what I mean.
I mean, it changed. It changed everything. Everything changed.
Everything changed, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's also discuss writer director for this episode.
We kind of have a change this week.
Yeah, a little bit, but a very interesting one.
Yes. The writer this time around, or the person who's credited for writing for television this time around is not Craig Mazin, as the previous 6 are. It is, in fact, his partner in this endeavor, Neil Druckmann. And you'd be like, well, why this episode? Is because so far everything else has been the Craig Mazin show.
Right.
I think because this is the smaller, like the bonus game for The Last of Us.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah, and since Neil is the guy who put the game together with the software with Naughty Dog, I that makes sense that he would kind of go, no, let me write this one, kind of a thing.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, and again, it's great. So I didn't really notice that much of a difference in the writing in this one versus the other ones that Craig's written. You know what I mean? It seemed pretty seamless. So again, it was fine, and I thought he did it. Like I said, he did a really good job of kind of hitting a lot of the highlights of that game and pulling specific moments, specific lines, or specific just whether it's the masks that they wear in the Halloween store or any of the other things that they run into in the mall that are direct lifts from the game. I mean, it's amazing. And so obviously, since he probably wrote that part for the game, you think he would know what the beats are of that, and what
he's pretty well informed on what that would be.
Absolutely. So, but anyway, that was our writer. And so again, that's a change, because every other episode written for television has been Craig. So be interesting to see if he writes any more. I can't remember what it said on IMDb, if Mazin had 9 writing credits or less than that, but we'll have to see. And then our director is a gal, and her name is Liza Johnson, and it could be Lisa Johnson, but it is Liza, so I'm gonna say it's Liza.
I like Liza. Let's go with that.
I do too. And she has a fairly long list of credits in directing, but I believe it looks to me like they're all TV is what she's directed.
Oh, okay, good.
And a bunch of series, some things we've heard of, some things maybe not. Just kind of looking at them going and what's been recent. She directed an episode of the show The Sex Lives of College Girls. She did a couple episodes of Dead to Me. She did an episode of Barry, which is the show on HBO. She did an episode of American Horror Story a few years ago. So she's done, she's worked a lot. So and I thought she handled this very well and really told a very touching, romantic story set in this horrible location. So
yes, she sure did.
So that is your writer and your director.
Yeah. My first point I put down was, we've actually already kind of talked about it. I put down the point that about the title being the same as the downloadable content that was in the game, and that most people that had watched the episode, the reviewers and just average folk that had played the game, said that like you were saying, that it follows the story pretty closely and has like those direct pulls. So yeah.
We'll get into it a little later. There's a couple of, there's one major difference, and again, it mostly has to do with the game's a game. It's not a show. Right. When you're playing the game, you're playing, you're not watching. And so and we'll get into that. But the stuff in the mall in terms of like where they went and what they did, like the 4 or 5 quote unquote wonders of the mall, those are all directly from the video game. So
I'm glad.
And we'll get into that. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So we were talking about it before we got into our points, but right off the bat, I labeled it as the bookend because the episode was bookended with Joel and Ellie, and then at the end you get that same thing. She's trying to help, and he's reasoning with her and telling her that she's got to go, and she doesn't want to, and they're both very upset, and he basically makes her leave. He tells her to go find, and she hesitates, and finally she resolves, and she gets up and she starts up the stairs because it looks like she's dragged him to a basement. Our first images that we get are that shows this like trail of blood, leading to a house.
Yeah.
and then they show them with him laying in the basement, which is good because that's a good sort of sheltered place to be, away from infected. No one can see you. If you have to have a light on, you're down in a basement somewhere. So it's a decent place to bring him, to sort of keep him safe. So he tries to get her to leave. She resists, and when she does finally leave, She heads up the stairs. She doesn't look happy about it. You know what I mean? She's doing this under protest. It definitely looks like.
Oh yeah.
But she gets to the top of the stairs and she puts her hand on the handle, on the door handle. She turns. She sort of stops and she thinks for a second. And while she's stopped at the top of the stairs, that's when we go back to her flashback, and then we have the rest of the episode there. But I thought it was a really, as I was saying, is a great way to sort of start things off. We've got, proof of life with Joel.
Mm-hmm.
He's not under a dumpster somewhere, or laying somewhere with a zombie with its stomach getting torn apart right on top of him, and oh my God, is that the way he's left? Anyway, we digress. So we, like I said, we sort of know where Joel is. We know he's secure in this basement. So if, Ellie does leave, they don't show her fully leaving. They just show her pausing at the top of the stairs. Now, as we're getting the Ellie sort of flashback, you don't know, is there more action going on? Because, I don't know the story. So the whole time I was like, well, is she completing her actions, like going to try and find Tommy or going to go do something? And we're getting this story. Meanwhile, in the background, she's doing these things and just thinking of all of that, as opposed to what we got, which is she clearly had this sort of memory. We get the entire flashback, and in the show itself, you just get like her quick pause at the top of the stairs, and then she goes into a different type of action. Right. But one of the things I thought of was, I didn't know if Ellie was continuing on, but in my head I was like, okay, he's in a basement. It's cold on the floor, which will slow his blood down, which is good. And I was literally like rationalizing these things in my head to make it okay for Joel. So I was like, okay. She can go and try and find Tommy. It's going to take a couple of days, but she can go really fast. She's by herself on the horse. She knows the way. She'll be fine. It's fine. And then it's going to be fine. And then they go to the flashback. And then I had that in the back of my head. And then after a while, the story in the back of my head just sort of slipped away. And I was just mainly paying attention to the Ellie story there. So
right. Yeah. Right. Well, that's what they want you to do. And then after the resolution of the Ellie story, then it snaps you right back and you realize, oh, wow, that was like a second in her head.
Yes.
As she kind of relived kind of that experience, because it's very similar to where she is right now in that, it can take the easy way out, like Riley said, although different kind of easy way out. And that's just to leave him or you can stick it out with him for however much time you have left together.
Right.
And, again, we just saw her make that decision in the past, and then it's clear, okay, Ellie's not gonna leave him. And then she goes into there has to be something here to help. And of course, as luck would have it, she finds the spool of thread with the needle. So.
Right. Which is fantastic luck, but definitely I was okay with it. Because I feel like that's something that I could see being left behind, and it's definitely something that would be in a junk drawer in someone's kitchen somewhere. Right. I bet if you went into my kitchen, there's probably a random roll of thread and a needle on there in one of those drawers.
Oh, that totally is. It's the third one from the right.
Yeah, thank you.
I do too. Like if she had found like a fully stocked like first aid kit, you'd be like, really?
Yeah.
But the fact that it was just a single roll of thread with a needle stuck in it, the way that everybody sticks a needle in a roll of thread, right, to store it makes total sense. And you're like, okay, is it, super likely? Nah, I don't know, maybe. But again, like you said, it's such a junk kind of a thing. Yeah. You could see it just, people wouldn't think to grab it when they're evacuating or if they're ransacking.
Yeah, because it's just such a small and slightly insignificant item. I don't get me wrong, that's a fantastic thing to have in the apocalypse for exactly the reason she shows you. That's but even just practically, your clothes are going to start to fall apart, man.
Right.
They just aren't manufacturing them the way they were in the before times. So,
hey, everyone should do themselves a favor and go buy one of those like $2 sewing kits.
Yep.
That's a little plastic box, and it's got 4 or 5 different kinds of thread and a bunch of different needles and some buttons and safety pins and all that stuff. And that way, you can take it with you if you need to. And if you rip something in your clothing, you can fix it right there if you have to. And then, as you said, if you let's say get stabbed with a piece of a broken baseball bat, you can then sew up yourself so you don't die.
Right.
Win-win.
Yeah. So for all of our doomsday preppers out there, grab one of those. You can get them at any Walgreens and then just toss it into your doomsday kit. You'll need it.
That's right.
You may not know how to sew, but maybe the person that you're giving, maybe Bill didn't know how to sew, but maybe Frank did.
Oh, you totally know that Frank knew how to sew.
Yeah, he did. He totally did.
Yeah.
So we get our first glimpses of pre-Joel Ellie, and she's running around a track we come to find out this is her military school that she was talking about. It's the Fedra military school. And she's running around a track, and she gets into a scuffle with this girl, which she punches her in the face, and she ends up in trouble. She ends up in the captain's office. And it's great. It's this great scene because you and I both know what a pain in the ass Ellie is. She's got a mouth on her. She doesn't like authority. She will, in moments with Joel and Tess in the beginning, once she realized the dangers of certain things and she saw how adept they were at certain stuff, she respected them. But they had to kind of almost earn it. And she wouldn't question. After a little bit, she didn't question. But prior to any of that stuff, she is a questioner. She wants.
Oh God, yeah.
And she questions authority. She questions the reasons things are done and why things are a certain way. And she's just not content to just sit and be there. And the captain, he lays out a couple of different things, like the things she has a choice of doing. And he makes a pretty compelling argument, He basically tells her, you can be one of two things. You can be, just the grunt. You can be the person who's on like grunt duty. And what'll happen is, you won't have the best food. You won't have the best place to live. You'll have the worst, duty selections. And you'll end up being managed and supervised by someone like Bethany. And then he puts like the thing of keys out and he's like, or you can be like that, or you could be the person who's Bethany. If you make that choice, you can be the person who's in charge. You can live in the better house and have the better place and have the better food, better opportunities. And, and he's basically is like, what do you want to do? And she's like, keys.
he says, you can tell the Bethanys of the world where they can go stick themselves.
Yes.
And we find out a little bit later with Riley that, that guy, he he's directly involved with deciding the future of all these kids. And he lets Ellie know that, look, he believes she's, has those special leadership qualities where she would be a good officer. And that's what he's telling her. He's like, if you were just to try just a little and get along, you'll get out of here, you'll become an officer, and then you'll get all the stuff that you just said, the better food, the better place to sleep, you don't go out on patrol, all that stuff. It's, you're warm in the winter and cool in the summer and all that stuff. And then the bonus is you can tell the Bethanys of the world to go fork themselves, and basically and he at one point he goes, you're smart, Ellie. You're so smart, you're stupid, which I thought was a really great kind of counselor line, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you're smart, you're so smart, you don't get it.
Yes.
You don't see it, that you have all the tools in you to be a really great leader. And I also like he makes this point in that discussion too, where he kind of says, look, everyone has their opinion of Fedra, but he firmly believes that without them, this whole city is going to fall apart, and they're the only thing that's holding it together. And he says, if we go away, the people who live in Boston will end up killing themselves for food, and most of them will starve, and it'll be all over,
Right.
And which is interesting, because when we meet Riley in like 10 minutes, she's gone the other way and has joined the Fireflies to get rid of Fedra. Right, because Fedra is this huge problem, and now they're fascist a-holes and all that stuff, or excuse me, fascist dork bags, I believe is the term that she uses. But yeah, and so we get a little sense of what the Fedra side of it is, and Ellie even uses that argument against Riley when she's like, look, you can stay and we can change things from the inside.
Right.
And Riley agrees, right? Riley says she won't go. And then, of course, the clicker shows up and everything changes. But at this point with Captain, and his name was Quang, who I liked that guy's performance in that he wasn't the yelling at you superior you get in a lot of these kind of shows. Yeah. He was very sympathetic and understanding, and he basically, like, she's like, just throw me in the hole. And he's like, you've been in the hole 3 times. That doesn't do anything. So this is a new approach. And it's kind of like I got the sense that he's basically going, this is kind of like your last chance, kid.
Yeah. And he's probably he's probably been the one to put her in the hole.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows it doesn't work. So what's the point? It's a waste of time for her because it doesn't work. And it's a waste of time for him because he's probably going to fill out some kind of paperwork that says that she's in there, and it doesn't work in the long run anyway. So, yeah. And and I love that the line that you chose, the "you're so smart, you're stupid" thing, because it's definitely something that I could see a high school guidance counselor saying. Yeah. And he's basically that. He's, he's got a lot more far-reaching life sort of, impact, but, very similar in the sense that he's sort of deciding where you should go and what you should do based on, how worthy you are as like a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old,
Right. Yeah.
So,
and remember, Riley says, that he gave her what posting she was going to get, because she says once you turn 17, then you get an assignment and you're done with school, right? And he gave her like sewage detail. Yep. So she's like, I get to watch people shovel shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Clearly that guy, he's not there to be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then how can we get you into a college to do that? Which is what, non-messed up universe guidance counselors do.
Right.
He's much more of what skills do you have, what aptitudes do you have, and then what position in the Fedra military will you be able to contribute the most.
Right.
And that's where with Ellie, he's just so disappointed in her because he sees what she could be. And we've seen that just in the show, how she's resourceful and she clearly is loyal to a fault, right? And she has those kind of inner qualities to take control of a situation when she needs to. She can make snap decisions that for the most part are good ones, and all the things that the people that are in the front leading do. And he sees that potential in her and is just like, if you would just play the game just a little bit, you could go so far, And the way she reacts, I got the sense that she was kind of buying it. I didn't think that she was just saying, lip service to get out of the office type of thing. You know what I mean? Did you sense that too?
No, I think that she's like that frustrated teenager where she sees the good and the bad and both the good and the bad of Fedra, and she wants to belong to something because she doesn't have family right now and she doesn't have anything that considers her important. And this could have been that if the night at the mall didn't happen, she would have she was so mad at Riley that night, she would have just gone back and thrown herself into being a Fedra soldier, and she would have, put all that stuff in her brain about like, I'll fix it from the inside and I know where the cracks are and whatever. I think she does believe him when he says she could do these things, because I think she sees in herself areas where she thinks she could make a difference too.
Okay.
So.
Okay, cool.
Agreed. So, what else do we have to talk about?
No, that's it.
No, that's it. We're done. So,
I don't. Just one thing, real quick,
yeah.
that I wanted to say is that when the episode first starts, and again, like you said, we see the blood trail, and then you see the housing, like it's like almost like a neighborhood that she's going through. And then you see that the blood trail leads up to the house, and then the horse is in the garage, which, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Joel is down in the basement. That is all straight out of the video game. And the horse is in the garage in the video game, which is awesome. But the way that the main game does it is different, and kind of threw me at first, because in the main game, when he falls off the horse and then she gets down and is like, don't leave me, you got to help me, I don't know what I'm doing and all that, then it smashes to black, and it's sort of like that's the end of that chapter of the game, and then it's going to start the next chapter. And okay, I'm just going to make this out there, Lisa Dupree, I'm not spoiling anything here, because we kind of saw this in the scenes for next week's episode, so do not write me an angry 16-page letter about this. But if you didn't
watch those scenes, then just forward ahead a little, 5 minutes. Yeah.
And this is nothing. But when it fades up from black in the game, it is Ellie by herself, and she is in the woods, and she's hunting a deer. And we see that in the scenes for next week. Okay, so I'm not giving anything away. The only difference is in the game she's using a bow and arrow, and in the scenes for next week it looks like she has Joel's rifle. But anyway, whatever. And Joel is I'm not gonna say anymore other than it's clear that like some time has passed from when he fell off the horse to where Ellie is now. Okay. And he's not out of the woods yet. He still needs medical supplies and things, but he's not like, oh, I'm still bleeding out, help me kind of a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And it goes from there. And again, it's awesome, and I cannot wait to get there, but that's next week, and we'll leave it at that, and I'm super excited for it. When you play the Left Behind bonus game, it restarts and it shows Joel getting wounded again. And that's another thing I have to make a little correction there, that I had said that Joel gets shot in the computer game.
Yeah.
And actually I was incorrect. He gets Rick Grimed in the computer game. He gets tackled by one of the bad guys at the college, and they fall off a balcony from the second floor to the first floor, and literally a piece of rebar goes right through him, just like Rick Grimes.
Oh.
And so then Ellie helps him up off the rebar, violating the rule we talked about last week.
Yeah, you got to leave it in there.
Right, but they don't have a choice, because Ellie shoots a bunch of them, and there's a lot of action and stuff, but then they get on the horse and they ride away. Then instead of going to the housing development where we see in the TV episode, Ellie ends up in a abandoned shopping mall. And Joel is in one of the stores, and the horse is in there in one of the stores, which again I think is awesome. And Ellie like takes her shirt and wraps it around him, because he has a hole right through him basically, and she then duct tapes that around him, and then she's like, I gotta find some supplies for you to help you. And so then she goes out in the mall and she closes the metal shutter door, and so he's kind of hidden and out of sight in this store. And then she is running around this mall in present day looking for supplies. And then you do that for a little while, and then it jumps to the flashback story with Riley. And you do that for a little while, and then it jumps back to the present day, and you're in the present day mall, and you know what I mean? So you kind of have two games you're playing at the same time. But as she's running around the mall in the present day, that's reminding her of this experience in the shopping mall in the past. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's a little bit different than what we saw here. And when she eventually finds the the thread and the needle and all that, it's not in the room or the house that Joel's in. It's in this shopping mall, and of course there's all kinds of infected. You got to fight to get through them because it's a game, and then once you get through the infected, a bunch of the guys from the college that were after you show up, and you got to fight through them to get back to Joel, and it's a lot more intensive. But again, it's a game, so
right.
So anyway, I just wanted to say that. So
all right.
So that it's a little bit different, but again, the flashback mall stuff is so spot on. It's great. And when we get in there, I will talk all about it. So,
well, before we get to the mall stuff, before Riley takes her away, we get this fantastic, like 2-minute scene where we get all of this really great detail of Ellie's room. And I think that stuff is fascinating because what a teenager chooses to put on their walls says a lot about who they are.
Oh,
and there's everything that's on the wall is purposeful, whether you liked the way it looks, or you like what it is. And it's interesting because here's this kid who's in, post-apocalyptic world, and none of these things that are on her wall are current. They are all some type of throwback because nobody's making more CDs, nobody's making more music or more movies or, any of that. So all of these things that she has on her wall and she's decorated in her room and all of this other like ephemera because she's got like the Walkman and the music and the stuff. And all of it is some type of throwback, which it would be no matter what she chose. But I love the mixture of it all. There's so many really cool things. You listed a few things, but it's just, you could probably I'm sure someone will do a screenshot of her wall and like detail every little piece of paper she's got on there. And I'm sure, you know how set dressers are these days. They know that the internet will find out. So everything that's on that wall is purposeful and has some type of connection to Ellie in some way. The whole wall is probably a big Easter egg.
Yeah, a lot. The whole. You're absolutely right, because if you remember, she when she's talking with Joel at one point, and she does if this all wasn't going on, what would you be? She said she wanted to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And she has that like picture of the moon on her wall. And if you look, there are a couple of drawings she's made of like the Saturn V moon rocket or a space rocket that she has up there. So clearly, this is reinforcing, oh yeah, she does. She's into space and she likes the astronauts and, Sally Ride, coolest astronaut name ever. We remember all that. She has the Mortal Kombat 2 poster on her wall. And, that's the video game that she is dying about and loves and thinks is so great. And, remember, she tells Joel in the store when she finds the game there, and it's obviously not working because it's the store doesn't have any electricity or anything. She talks about Melina, and Melina sucks in your body and then spits all your bones out in the finish him thing. And we see that actually happen, So again, another great little callback. And then she also has drawings of dinosaurs on her wall. And when she's in the mall with Riley says, well, I have a gift for you. Because remember, Ellie's like, I got to go. Because it's like 3 a.m. and I got to get up in an hour. So I'm going to leave. And Riley's like, I have a gift for you. And then she's like, is it a dinosaur? I'll be your best friend again if it's a dinosaur. So, clearly she loves dinosaurs. And so, the whole thing is, and then the music, like you said, she has the Walkman, but we see she has 3 cassette tapes. And oh my God, remember cassette tapes?
Yes, I do.
But she's got 3 of them. And the top one is the greatest hits of Aha. And of course, when she gets on the electrical staircase, we hear "Take on Me" playing on the soundtrack. And the other one is an Ella James record, which of course has the "I Got You, Babe" song that they dance to at the end. So again, there's so much stuff in that room that is in the background that they don't necessarily linger on a lot of it. I mean, they linger on the cassette tapes, but everything else is just sort of there. And if you see it, you see it. But I loved it. I love when movies do that, and they kind of give you clues and to point you in what direction they're going, and it's not overt, but it's there if you see it.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, and the thing that's great about that is that if you don't notice it, it doesn't ruin the experience.
No.
But if you do, it just adds this extra layer that wasn't there before. You've got this great episode that without those extras would still be a great episode. But then if you've got these other little almost like shout outs, it's almost, I always look at it as like it's a shout out to you and your ability to notice things. And you're like, yeah, we know you're watching. Big fan, keeping your eye on the little details. And we know that this will, excite you. This will, give an extra layer of like love or affection toward the episode. So I love that stuff.
And I think too, doesn't she also have volume 1 of the joke book on
she
her
sure does. They
table?
make a big point of showing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, all these kind of things that we've seen about Ellie and her experience with Joel, it's all right there. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's all right there. And you're like, oh, yeah, she does love those stupid puns. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she does. So Riley shows up and you can tell that when it comes to their friendship, she's probably used to being able to get her way with Ellie because she's like, let's go. And she's like, absolutely not. And then she's like, I'm waiting. And she's like, ugh. So they go.
She says, first you're going to say no, but then eventually you're going to say yes.
and it happens. It totally happens.
Yeah.
It just goes to show how well they know each other. And so they head out. They're going, they climb down, then they end up going up. And they are navigating the city by going across the rooftops, which makes a lot of sense. And there's a couple of, before we move on, there are a couple of geography things that I want to.
Okay.
No. They're not big.
I'm going to check my phone. Go right ahead.
Calm down. You make things bigger than they are. So when we talked about episode 2, when she was outside the city, the QZ gates with Tess and Joel, and was walking around, and I was pointing out some geography here and there, and I made a comment about there's 2 bridges in Boston that are very iconic and very obvious looking. Of the 2 of them, the one that looks the most obvious is this one called the Zakim Bridge. And the Zakim Bridge, if you Google it, Zakim, the Zakim Bridge, it was built so that it emulates, it's got 2 towers on it that look exactly like the Bunker Hill Monument, or it's shaped just like the Washington Monument, a tall obelisk, right? And so the silhouette of the Zakim Bridge is very obvious to anyone who's been to Boston or anyone who's from Boston. So at one point when they were on one of the rooftops, you can see it in silhouette behind them, that it's off in the distance in the dark. And they did a good job because the construction of the Zakim Bridge completed in 2003. So it was definitely there right before the apocalypse fell. And even if let's say the bridge opened for real in like November of that year, it wouldn't matter because the structure was probably almost intact by the time everything happened in Boston in the show. So timeline wise, it makes sense for it to be there, which is great. And it's just a tiny little nod in the background that I was hoping they would do to show something very Boston, and it's there. And it made me kind of like how we were just talking about the Easter eggs with her room. It's just a tiny little thing that other people from Boston, if you catch it, it just makes your heart go a little flutter. And if you didn't catch it, because I pointed it out, I had a whole Facebook thread chatting with some friends about it, and a lot of people didn't even notice it. A lot of people were like, I didn't even realize the flashback was back in Boston. And I'm like, how did you not realize the flashback was back in Boston? She was in Boston, and she flashed back to when she was at the mall, which she talked about. How did you not know it was in Boston? But hey, people pay attention to different details in different shows. So who am I to judge? But anyway, So it's a very Boston thing. It was right there in the background for you to see. And I loved it. So the mall. So the mall itself, I think we've all debated. The Bostonians and I have debated, and we have decided it resembles a couple of different places. Interior wise, it looks a lot like this one mall called the Galleria, the Cambridge Side Galleria. The only problem is geography wise, it's in Cambridge. It's on the other side of the Charles River, which they never crossed a river in order to get to the mall. Not that we saw. But it would have been pretty obvious because they wouldn't have been able to do it over rooftops. They would have had to get down and cross a bridge. So we don't think it's the Galleria itself, but maybe they were inspired by it. In terms of location and where they are, there really isn't a building like that. So I think a lot of us sort of agree that it is close to a couple of different buildings. So there's a mall at Copley Place in Copley Square. There's a interior mall that's a little more encased, like doesn't have as much glass. That's part of the Prudential building, just called the Pru, and the Galleria. So it's those three are the ones that most people agree that there's probably like little bits and pieces that were taken as like sort of inspiration for this mall for Boston. So while this one that they're in doesn't geography wise really exist in real life in Boston, they did appear to take inspiration from a couple of different places. So it's very close to a couple of places that actually do exist. So it's very, very cool. So yeah, so there you go. So the problem is that Boston itself is so tightly knit, and it's so like, I mean, the way that they were jumping across those buildings, I mean, that's what it's like. All the buildings are right on top of each other. You can jump from building to building. It's just, especially in the North End where they are, it is very tight like that. And building to building, you probably could jump around like that. There just isn't any room for malls and stuff like that. That's such a like suburb thing. And even like in a mall like that, you know, I mean, I think of, you know, locally, like for you and I in Chicago, you know, there are a couple of places downtown that are like that, but they don't look like a traditional mall layout, kind of like how this was. I mean, if you think about like Water Tower Place, and there's a couple other places along Michigan Ave, but they're all encased inside a building and don't have those like big windows, the big ceiling, and all that other stuff. So it's kind of hard in a big city environment like that to have a big mall like that. So Boston just doesn't have a lot of,
particularly a city that's as old as that too.
Yeah. It's not like, I mean, if this were a brand new city where you're planning it out, yeah, sure, why not? You know, but you know, Boston's got a couple of things going for it. And some not. And one of it is that the buildings are so old, it's not like they're going to just knock down 5 city blocks to build a mall,
right.
When those buildings were probably built, you know, in the 1700s, and nobody wants to do that. So
they're all historical landmarks and all that stuff.
Yeah. So that's me and my Boston pals. 5 cents on the I guess it's a little more than 2 cents on the geography of Boston and whether or not that mall really exists, which it doesn't really, but it was inspired by. So it's very like Boston. It could, in an alternate universe of Boston, that would fit in a couple of different spots. So there you go.
So you're saying it's more Boston adjacent than Boston?
Yes, probably more Boston adjacent. Okay. Yes. But anyway,
in the Ant-Man movie, they go to it in the quantum universe or something.
Perhaps it could be. So the mall itself, how cool was that? Did you get any like Dawn of the Dead vibes?
Well,
sort of walking around.
I just chuckled to myself, and I just thought, why is it in all these zombie apocalypse stories, everybody goes to the mall? I don't understand, but they do.
Yeah. What is it that Flyboy says when he's like, it's it's just it's in their nature. Like, why are they showing up? It's it's in their head.
It's like it's an important place in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just want to be in there,
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Okay. Even when you're dead, you go to the mall.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because Ellie actually has a moment where they talk about which I thought was cool. They made a point of talking about the stuff that was deemed important when when society kind of fell. Riley said, when everything fell, there were looters for a little bit before Fedra sort of brought everything under control. And they comment for a second on like what was deemed important and what wasn't.
Yeah, like so tennis sneakers.
Like, sneakers.
Yeah, because like the Foot Locker is completely empty.
Yeah.
But the soap store, like the Bed Bath and Beyond, like that's still got all kinds of stuff in the windows and whatnot. So it's like soap, not so much, but shoes, yes.
Yeah, sneakers, yes. Soap, no.
And then they go up to the Victoria's Secret store and then they're like, how do you wear that stuff? And then Riley starts laughing. She's like, I just was trying to imagine you wearing that, which I think is really, if that's a double-edged line, because first of all, it's funny. Yes. Right. And they're both looking at that thong and be like, oh my God, that looks so uncomfortable,
Right.
But then for Ellie, it's that kind of, she actually thought about me wearing this.
Yes.
Yes. Which again, that you really get the sense as this story's unfolding that, okay, this is like Ellie's like crush and one of her first crushes. And we've all been there for unrequited love, and it's awful and wonderful at the same time. And Ellie is like kind of going through the journey of, is she going to throw herself out there to see if it's anything coming back?
Yeah.
Or is she just going to keep her mouth shut and just, we'll just be friends, and of course, for her, it turns out to be a wonderful night and then a horrible night, but mostly a wonderful night.
Yeah.
And that not only is her feelings for Riley genuine, but Riley has the same feelings back. And, then it's just that really sweet moment where she kisses her and she goes, I'm sorry. And then Riley goes, for what? And you're just like, yay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I thought that was like, I mentioned before we started recording that when I was watching the episode, my wife was with me and she hasn't watched any of this series, but she knows that it's, I'm using air quotes here, it's a zombie show. So she knows that, if it's too quiet for too long, then something's wrong. Like something's going to happen. So
exactly.
she was like, after about 20 minutes, she's like, I'm super tense. Like, I'm just waiting for something to happen. Like, what is going to happen here? And I was like, I can't tell you, but I know. But for me, there was the tension of, oh my God, we know from Ellie's story that she gets bit. So there's some type of interaction with an infected that happens here. And then I was also tense because she spent the whole episode, pretty much the whole episode, dealing with, maybe I should try and kiss her now. No, I won't kiss her now.
Yeah.
And then man, I really want to just kiss her now. Like that look on her face. And then like, she's really friendly. She wants to kiss. Nope. She does. Nope.
No. Yeah.
No. And it was just.
And then like, is this my moment? Oh no, wait, I missed it. Wait, did I miss my moment? Oh no, I need another moment. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
She took the time in the moment, they had that funny moment at Victoria's Secret, like you said. And then Riley walks away and then Ellie, she fixed her hair a little bit to make sure she looked okay.
Oh yeah.
And as they're moving along, it's adorable. Cause like you said, we've all been there. We've all been in that moment where like, I'm with this person that I like so much and I just want to kiss them. And I am absolutely convinced that they don't want to kiss me. No, wait, maybe they do. No, they don't.
They do? Oh, no,
but maybe, no. Yeah. And then that just is like your brain for like, that's all you can think about. And then they ask you a question. You're like, wait, what? I wasn't listening. What?
Yeah, sorry. I was totally in my head right there. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I actually, because of that, I was tense because I just assumed, because the way the infected ended up coming through was different. than how I was expecting. Like in my head, because she was so distracted by like how she was feeling and blah blah blah, I expected them to both be sort of like lost in the gaze of each other's, whatever, like they were going to be staring at each other, and then an infected would come out of nowhere and gain the upper hand that way, as opposed to how it did happen, which was, there was a noise and they were able to get prepared, get behind me, took out the gun, took out, you know what I mean? And they were able to at least have some type of plan of attack before it came out, right? So that was not what I was expecting. I totally was like, especially when when the merry-go-round stopped, I was like, oh my God, she's like, I'll go fix it. I'm like, don't go fix it. Don't go fix it.
No. Have you ever seen a horror movie?
Yeah. So like every little thing, I was like, they're going to be in the photo booth and all of a sudden, it's going to come in. So it was like every little fun thing, and we've got the list of her, like, the 5 wonders of the world that she put together. Every single thing had this tinge of like, look out, don't close that curtain. He's going to come in and get you,
Yeah.
And it was.
I knew it was gonna. I knew. I should say I knew how the game did it, which is not how the show did it. So I wasn't necessarily sure when it was going to happen, but I was very worried when Riley just nonchalantly got out of the photo booth.
Yeah.
And she just kind of pulled the curtain aside and stepped out, because at that point I'm like, oh my God, someone's going to be right there and just going to jump on her. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh my God. But no, it didn't. And I thought that the director, Liza Johnson, did a really nice job of, they're in the arcade, and then there's that cool shot where they like pull back out of the arcade and kind of go down the hallway to that other store, and you see there's the clicker against the wall, and he kind of wakes up because he hears the noise. So they're kind of letting us know, okay, it's not empty.
Yeah.
Right. And then from that moment on, you're just like watching every corner, waiting for that dude to show up, because it's they wouldn't. Again, it's like Pavlov's clicker, right? I mean, they're not going to show him if he ain't coming back. So.
And we know from Ellie's story, she says she got bit when she broke in the mall with a friend.
Yeah.
And it's got to be this time.
Mm-hmm.
Unless if they had faked us out and at the end they were like, all right, I'll meet you tomorrow night or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was pretty sure that this was going to be, because it was, it's an important memory. So it was going to have this happen in it. Oh God, just so the tenseness of, Ellie told this story, that there's some type of interaction with an infected. And then they show the infected, and you're like, "Oh God, he woke up! Oh my God, stop making noise, you guys! Stop making noise!
What are you guys doing? Yeah, right.
Silly girls." And then, like you said, after that, it was like every time they turned, you're like, oh, "What was that? Oh God, don't do that! Oh, geez, stop making noise!"
Oh yeah, it's like, come on, what are you doing?
I know.
But they and Riley is, Ellie's much more uptight about it, and Riley is just like, forget it, it's fine. And then you find out Riley has been living in this mall for at least a couple of days, right?
Yep.
So, and you have to imagine that because she said she played Mortal Kombat, the game, because she kind of knew the controls and some of the moves and stuff. And so she clearly has turned everything on previously.
Yep.
And nothing happened. So Riley is totally convinced that no, there are no infected in here, without actually like going through every store and every nook and cranny to make sure. And of course, it literally comes up to bite her in the hand.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yes.
So the tops, the 5 wonders of the world that she did, it actually turned out to be 6, because
no. She had 4, and then it becomes 5.
She's like, yeah, we'll add this to it, because Ellie's reaction
oh my God.
to the escalator was so adorable. It really, like, it gave you that, in that moment when you realized it, you're like, just like, in the car and these other things where she's like, I've never experienced this thing before.
Right.
It just was. It was. I'm so glad that they're taking the time to show these discoveries that she has. It makes it so much more real.
Yeah.
You know, that she's never seen the world before. It was adorable. I loved it. She called it the magic stairs.
The electric stairs. Yeah. And and that, by the way, that is a lift from the game in that she doesn't she doesn't quite go on as much as she did in the show, but she definitely does this is so cool. And then she goes, I'm going up. Now I'm going down. Now I'm not moving at all, you know, and all that. And so that is a direct lift. I also love it when right before that, when Riley has her go stand outside, you know, she's like, you're going to go down this hallway and turn right and go through the door and wait. And Ellie's like, are you going to kill me? And she's like, maybe, you know. And so she goes down there, and then Riley hits the circuit breaker, and that look on Ellie's face when everything in the mall lights up and kind of you have that kind of power up, that kind of, you know, and it's running, and just that look of wonder. And of course, again, the way they film it, you get that the light kind of hits her face, and her face brightens up because now there's all this light on it, versus the kind of darkness that she was in. It's just that sense of, like, you know, childhood wonderment that she has about all of this stuff that we just don't even acknowledge anymore. We just take for granted. That we have. I mean, then when's the last time you looked at an escalator and went, you know how cool this is that I don't have to actually walk upstairs? You know what I mean?
The last time I looked at an escalator in any cool way was when Larry did the thing
from Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, at the mall. I mean, that's it. You just, but again, it's all these conveniences that we take for granted that they'll always be there, they'll always work, and, you know, it's no big deal because we've been around them for our entire lives. And here there's this character who has, you know, never seen any of these things before, you know. I mean, so she's I love that look on her face, that sort of holy crap, you know. And then you're right, then they go to she, like I said, she has 4 wonders to show her, and then right when she gets on the escalator, she's like, oh my god, is this one of the wonders?
She's like, yeah, sure, it's number 5.
Yeah, it'll be number 5. Riley's looking at her like, you dope. You know?
So there's the stairs, you know, those are you know, part of the list, quote unquote. Right. She has the merry-go-round, which was so cute. And little side note, I really hope that you noticed it because you're a good music guy. But
just like Evan?
Yes, thank you very much.
As
soon as it started tinkle, tinkle, tinkle playing, I was like, that's a melody.
You're like, I know that
song. Yeah. It took like a good 5 seconds for it to hit my brain space. Because I was like, my brain knows this song, but because it was in a format you're not used to, it takes a little bit longer for it to sort of, and I was like, oh my God, it's The Cure. And it was great. And it's the perfect song for that moment.
Oh, in multiple ways, if you think about it, because first of all, the song is by the band The Cure. And what is Ellie technically in this apocalypse?
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Right? Sure. Then on top of it, and I know that this song was written by Robert Smith, who was a middle-aged British emo dude, but I think he was channeling his like 14-year-old girl when he wrote the lyrics, because in the first verse, you know, the line is, show me how you do it, and I promise that I'll run away with you, which is exactly what Riley wants Ellie to do.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that was and first of all, it is just a great 80s song. There's no doubt about it. It's amazing. Yeah. And it just, again, much like the song from the end of episode 1 by Depeche Mode, it just fits, right? And it's one of those weird coincidences because it was written 40 years ago, but it fits and it works. And again, like you said before, with the stuff on the walls, it's very subtle.
Yep.
And you might not get it. Like it said, it took, it took me a couple of bars for me because I'm like, I know that song. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Secure. And you were the same way. I'm sure we were like, wait a minute, I know that song,
Yeah.
But if you didn't get it, it was just kind of a nice little melody, and it didn't wreck the scene at all. It was still a really adorable scene with these two kids. So, but yeah, I thought that was a brilliant piece of building that scene and making that scene work on so many more levels that are there if you want them, but if you don't want to see them, it works just as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think that the use of that music piece is actually it like is one of the best ways to sort of highlight what we've said like 10 times already this episode, which is those extras. That scene is adorable, and the emotions are exactly the same, even if you don't know the song. But that little extra layer, if you know it and you're like, it's The Cure, oh, it's the perfect song, oh, it's great, you know what I mean? It adds more elements to it for you personally.
Right.
Such a great song.
It was so great.
So merry-go-round, great scene. The picture booth, which was great as well. I love how I forgot how like money is actually still like you can find money in places. And it was so it made the video game scene funny as well. But the fact that she was like, $5, and she's like, I'm ready.
Yeah, look what I have, and she's got a $5.
Well, like she put together this whole night. So she definitely made sure that she found amongst all the money, all other places, that there was one that was an actual $5 bill. So they do go ahead.
As you say, when they're in the arcade and she's like, we need money, and Riley kind of points over to the change machine, and like on the floor is just bills. All kinds of the money, and she's like, not that kind of money. We need coins, But yeah, so clearly you're right. Riley has set this whole thing up, and so she was well prepared for the photo booth, and probably even tested it out first to make sure it worked,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that at those video game places where you would get the quarters, there was definitely times where you weren't using $1. You put a $5 or a $10 in there because you knew you were going to be there for a while. So So she probably got that $5 from inside that change machine anyway. So yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Absolutely.
So the picture booth was great. I loved how it was exactly like anyone else that would do the picture booth. We're like, oh God, what do we do? What do we do? Do this. Do this. Yeah. So that was adorable. The video games.
Yeah. Well, just before we leave the video, the picture booth, you do that in the game. And you basically you pick what kind. It gives you the option of, are you friends, is it love, or is it something else? So you can pick, and then the game, the booth says, okay, do this pose, and then you can like change to a different pose, and that's where you get the let's do back to back, and let's do scary, and you do that, and they run through the 4 pictures, and then it's a little different. Because in the show, it prints out the photos, but they're really faint, right? Because the printer's 20 years old and the toner's 20 years old, and so on. And so they get them that way. In the game, when you get done, it shows the pictures on the screen, and then it's like, are you happy, or do you want to retake them? And they say they're happy, and then it goes, do you want to upload them to Facebook? And Riley goes, what's Facebook? Which I thought was really funny. And so then and then they go, just say yes. And so she does. And then it says, enter your account name and password. And so they're like, just enter something. And so Ellie types something in there, and then you get the spinning hourglass, and then it goes, no internet connection found.
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. But so it's a slightly different than what the show did, but still super amusing. And then also just going back to the merry-go-round, the merry-go-round breaks down in the game too.
Oh really?
And there's no Cure song in it. They just get on it, and they're riding it, and they have a little bit of a discussion about it, and then it stops. And Riley's like, well, maybe I can fix it. And then Ellie's like, no, let's go. And so then they move on. So yeah. But anyway, two of the wonders were adorable. There's no doubt. But now we go to Raja's arcade, and that is again a direct lift. The neon sign outside is a direct lift from the game. and we go in. The big difference, which I think I've said a couple times here, is that in the game, they either didn't want to or didn't have the money to get the rights to use Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So it is a made-up game that is basically Mortal Kombat. It's just called something else.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we go into the arcade. So go ahead.
Oh, no, just I loved everything about it. And it's funny because I actually was able to have a very similar moment recently, because we went back in November, we went on for someone's birthday. There's a place nearby me that's one of those like retro arcade places where they're all rigged and you pay like, $10, $15 a person and you can play unlimited.
Unlimited, yeah.
And literally, it was just me and Centipede for like 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's my jam. But everybody like I literally walked around exactly like Ellie did in that moment where I totally understood. For her, it was discovery. For me, it was nostalgia.
Right, exactly,
obviously. Yeah. But her wide-eyed, this is amazing. The colors, because everything's neon. It's like purple neon all over the place. It was perfect. It was exactly the right vibe. You and I have been to that exact like arcade, something exactly like that in our lives.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really well done. And the games that they were able to get like the rights for that you saw sort of in the background, there was, like
there was a centipede, there was a Frogger.
Yeah, I saw there was like a Pac-Man of some kind, and this, that, and the other. So everything looked very accurate. Like that's what would be in a retro arcade for sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, back then it wasn't super retro, but it was definitely old school.
Yeah.
What I loved is before they leave the merry-go-round and they're like, okay, on to the next wonder, and then Riley stops out in the mall, in the main walkway of the mall, and Ellie's like, what? And she's like, close your eyes.
Yeah.
And so she does, and she goes, do you hear it? And then you hear the sound of the arcade, which again, as you know, has a very distinctive ding 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 ding, ding, all those kind of pleasing tones, right?
Yes.
And if that doesn't set that nostalgia, like, oh my God, I totally remember going to the arcade, nothing will, right? But I thought that was a real great moment too, that you hear it first before, or Ellie hears it before she sees it, and she knows, she's like, no way, and so she's just totally stoked about it. So yeah, it was great. Again, just one of the little differences in the game versus the show is in the game, they go into the arcade and some of them are lit up, but none of the games work. And they go up to the Mortal Kombat game in the game, which again, it's called something else, and I don't remember what it is. But it doesn't work at all. And so what Riley does is she says, the joystick does this, and this button is your kick, and this button's your punch, and this button's your block or whatever. And so she goes, all right. And then she goes, all right, close your eyes. And then Riley describes the game to Ellie, you're playing this character. Here comes the bad guy. He's coming closer, and he's going to do this move. And then for gameplay, it's kind of like Guitar Hero moment where it'll suddenly show you like an up arrow, a down arrow, and then like a triangle, a square, and a circle, and you have to hit those buttons in that sequence to successfully dodge the bad guy or to hit him. And it has the life bars at the top, and every time you do it right, the bad guy's life bar goes down a little bit, and every time you screw it up, and you only have like a second or two to do it, your life bar goes down. And if you win, you unlock a trophy, you get some kind of little reward. It doesn't affect the game story at all if you win or lose, but it's just kind of a neat little thing that they do. So she doesn't get to really play it. She gets to imagine that she plays it, but it's still adorable that Riley's kind of talking her through the whole thing. So
yeah, there's so much I loved about that scene. It was great. So the next thing she does is she gives her the second book.
Yes.
Which was adorable. And it's great because we both know that she still has it. So she's hung on to it, and it's something that's very important to her. I wonder if you you looked inside that book or the other book, if the pictures they took in the photo booth would be like sort of tucked inside. That's what I'd love to see. I don't know. Don't tell me if it happens, but I just like in my little heart, I want at some point for Ellie to be doing something
and find
like,
it.
Yeah, well, or either find it or like Joel comes up to ask her a question and she like tucks. You can see she put the pictures back in the book and she puts it away.
Yeah,
because she was like thinking about it and then got interrupted or whatever. But anyway,
what? I do not have the answer to that question because, like I said, in the video game, you don't actually get a hard copy of the pictures. So
okay.
So I do not know if they will use that or not. That's really cool. And also keep in mind that the scene with the book happens right after they kind of have a fight.
Yes,
because
that's true.
Riley is going to be a Firefly, right? And I believe Riley takes it's so funny. She takes her into like the food court, and she goes up to the taco place, and she's like, "Oh my God, is my gift a taco?" and Riley looks at her like, "No." And so they go into the back, and she sees like her stuff's there, and Ellie's like, "Wait, have you been living here?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then Ellie finds all the pipe bombs. That Riley either had built or had been given. And of course, this brings back the whole idea that, oh yeah, the Fireflies kill the Fedra guys, and so then this sparks a huge, and it, on some levels, it's a sort of a moral debate on which side of the argument are you going to fall on here? Are you going to be the Fedras who do horrible, awful things, or are you going to be the Fireflies, which do horrible, awful things as well? And Ellie like storms out in a huff, right? And then she comes back, and I think that's when she gives her the joke book, and then the scene kind of turns a little bit lighter then, and they have a great time doing all the puns.
Yes.
What did the triangle say to the circle? You're so pointless.
Yeah. And it's great.
And then there's also one where like they asked like how did the computer get drunk, and it said it did too many screenshots, and then Riley goes, what are screenshots?
I love it. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So they have an argument. They have another argument which gets Ellie. It's so bad that Ellie leaves.
Yeah.
After they do the book and they do the funny stuff and whatever, but they have a big argument, and Ellie leaves, and she almost makes it out. She's all the way down in that hallway, and she changes her mind, and she comes back,
and she hears her scream.
Yeah, she hears yes, and she goes running, and of course in your head I'm like, oh my God, this is it. She's gonna come in, and the clicker's there.
The clicker got her. Oh no.
Yeah. And then she comes in, and the screaming is there's like a prop, and it's like a spirit Halloween store.
Yes, the Halloween store.
Which would make total sense, because think of when everything fell. It was the end of September. Yeah. So that's exactly when all those spirit Halloween stores would start to pop up, is like that 1 month before Halloween crap.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's very, very appropriate. So it's just like a little prop that's like, ah, and she's like, and of course Riley's like sitting on the floor, and she's like, this was going to be your last thing.
Yeah.
I love it. And they sort of reconcile a little bit, and they end up, she puts on some music, and they're dancing around. It's I've Got You, Babe. They put on the Halloween masks.
Yes.
And they're dancing, and it's adorable. And in your head, you're like, this is it. They're going to kiss. They're going to kiss. They're going to kiss. They're going to kiss.
And they do.
And like you said, it was so adorable, because Ellie's like, I'm sorry. And Riley's like, for what?
Yeah.
So it's clear she feels the same.
Yeah, and then Ellie's reaction to that line, because again they cut to Ellie as soon as Riley says it, and you see that little Bella Ramsey smile. She's like, oh my God, and she, at the same time that like we realize that wait, Riley's into her too. Yeah. That's when Ellie realizes it, and it felt really genuine.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, the masks exact lift from the game.
That's amazing that they did that.
I love it. And also, just again, my brain and the way that I look, Ellie's mask is a werewolf.
Yep.
And again, the thought process for me is you can look at it as it's just a Halloween mask. I look at it as, well, a werewolf is a being that starts out as a person and turns into something else. Yep. And Ellie is like moments away from going from being a human being to turning into something else. Yep. Transformation, all that kind of stuff. And also the idea of, is that she turning into a monster? Because that's what she thinks is going to happen. Yeah. And so on. So all kinds of symbolism you could read into it. And in the game, those masks are identical, which the clown mask, the like Killer Clowns from Outer Space mask that Riley wears. Oh my God, is that it's awesome and horrible because I hate clowns. But yeah, I as soon as I saw that, I'm like, holy crap, they got the masks right. That's awesome. So
yeah, but her mask was really horrifying.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, it's terrible. And in the game, there are other masks in the Halloween store, and you can change if you want. So you don't have to just wear that one. But those are the two you start with. So
yeah. Yeah, why would you start with a clown? And what's great too is like visually, like Riley is taller than Ellie, and there was like the hair of the clown sticks up in like a big like ponytail or big spike,
like and so straight up spike.
Yeah, so it makes Riley even taller. So she's dancing around. So here's this creepy clown dancing around and like looming over Ellie. And there was a moment where you're like, is this going to turn bad?
Yeah, right.
Is it good? You don't know.
What I thought, because, and we'll get into that in that the differences between the game and the episode. But I thought when they put the masks on, I'm like, no, don't put a mask on. You can't see. Your vision's restricted, and that clicker's going to get you. That's when I thought the clicker was going to jump out and get them, when they're focused on themselves, first of all. And then they're wearing these masks that are covering their ears and their eyes, so they can't hear or see very well. It's like, yeah, you're just asking to get bit now.
Yeah. So that scene was adorable and sweet and nice, and they kiss. And then, they're having their little moment, and there's a noise.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you're like, this is it.
Well, they kiss, they have their moment, and then Ellie asks Riley to stay. Don't leave. And Riley says, yes, I will. Yeah. And so there's that, like, again, well, what do we always say in these shows? As soon as someone thinks about the future, has a hopeful moment, right?
Yeah, as soon as anybody's happy.
Yeah, all right. That's just the harbinger that, thanks for coming. We're gonna we're gonna clap her out. She's done with this shoot, and and as soon as Riley goes, okay. And Ellie smiles and has that, oh my God, I'm going to get my best friend back that now has benefits. Yay! Yes. What happens? That's when the clicker shows up, and hilarity does not ensue.
No, it does not. And it moved pretty quick, even though Riley had the gun, we know from the other scenes that it's not unheard of for it to take quite a few shots to take a clicker down. Yeah. Unless you get a really good, perfect headshot, a body shot with them. I mean, I hate to talk about the title of our podcast, but it really doesn't work for the clickers. It just really doesn't. It doesn't slow them down is the thing. In a lot of other zombies and a lot of other genres, it may, like, depending if they're slow or shamblers or shufflers or whatever, it might knock them down or take them off their feet a little bit.
Yeah.
But for these clickers, they just move too quickly, and a body shot makes no effect on them whatsoever.
Yeah, I will often, particularly with this type of ghoul, you would wonder, would it be more a smarter use of your ammo to, like, try and shoot them in the knees or the legs?
Yeah.
And that, you're not going to kill them, but if you can,
take them out,
destroy their kneecap, they're not going to be able to run. They're not going to be able to come at you as quickly
right,
as they normally would. But again,
give you a chance to get away.
Yeah, in the heat of the moment, though, you're just, you're aiming center mass. I mean, that's just normal reaction. And it looks like Riley actually hits it a couple times.
Yeah,
and like you said,
she got a couple of good shots. Yes.
Yeah, it just doesn't have any effect, and also she doesn't like empty the clip out. She shoots a couple times, and then they try and get away. They try and run. And that's when it's able to get on. It jumps on Ellie first, it hits Riley and knocks her out, and then it jumps on Ellie, and then Riley saves Ellie, and it looks like Ellie's in real trouble, and then Riley saves her, and then it jumps on Riley, and then finally Ellie stabs it in the neck with her switchblade, and for that brief second, Ellie's like, "Holy crap, we did it! We did it!" And then Riley's got looking, and she's like. She doesn't say anything, but she's got that horrified look, and then Ellie looks down at her arm, and you see the bite marks, and it starts to bleed. And I tell you, when she starts trying to rub the blood away, and she's going like, no, 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 it just, you feel for
wasn't
her.
That the worst?
Yeah, because again, we know obviously that she's not going to die because she's the freaking cure, right?
But she doesn't know.
She doesn't know that, and so her whole life, she's been taught if you get bit by one of those things, you're dead.
You're dead.
Yeah,
yep.
And just, I mean, it would be tough for me as an old ass man to have to think about that right now. Imagine being 14.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that was, and then of course it doesn't get any better when then Riley holds up her hand, and she has the bite marks, next to her thumb, and the blood's running down from there. So it's like a double whammy for Ellie in that, okay, you're gonna die, but also your girlfriend is gonna die too. It's just what a pisser.
Yeah, like I know that you were feeling on top of the world, like everything was going your way, and the whole world is coming up Ellie, just 5 minutes previous, but that's it all changed so quickly.
Yeah. But then it leads to one of the greatest moments in the whole show.
Yeah.
Which is the two of them sit down, and Ellie is clearly like, what do we do? Again, but much like with Joel, she's like, what do we do? And Riley says, well, there are two options. One, we could take the easy way out. And she's holding their pistol. Yeah. And she's right away, she's like, I don't like that idea. And then Ellie's like, what's the other option? And she's like, we spend as much time as we have left together. Yeah. Whether that's an hour, whether that's a day, we will turn into plants together, and just live together as the two of us as long as we can.
Yeah.
And it's right at that moment. And I think then she goes, is there an option C or a third option? And Riley just kind of goes, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And then it cuts back to Ellie standing in front of the door. And you can tell she's just had that question in her head. Do I take the easy way out and run away from Joel? Yeah. Or do I stay and fight and spend as much time with him as we have left, whether that he's going to die 10 minutes from now or whatever. Yeah. And again, she makes that decision. And I love that moment. I think that, first of all, directly out of the game, absolutely 100% directly from the game. And it just is super powerful.
Yeah. And one of our listener feedbacks, we'll get there when we get there, but one of our listener feedbacks brought this up, and I was going to bring it up anyway.
Okay.
I think, to me it's obvious, but I don't know. Maybe it's not obvious to others, but clearly Ellie's story when they were in Kansas City, when she said, it's not my first time.
Yeah.
Clearly putting down Riley with the pistol or with her knife
or something.
Yeah. That was her first time.
I don't remember that in the game, but
I think in the show it's gonna be.
You're right, and it would totally fit, and it would totally help make Ellie the way she is when we meet her.
Yes, and I think too, like, I don't think that they need to even show it. No. I think everyone who paid attention to that scene when she said, it's not my first time, and then they saw this, and we know what's going to happen. We know that Riley's going to turn, just like Sam, and Ellie is not.
Right. Right.
then I think part of what Ellie is also thinking of at the top of the stairs is, I should be the one, if he wants to go out, like if Joel doesn't want to be in pain and he wants to die, I should be here with him because I was there with Riley and it was important. Like, if she could go back in time, she wouldn't change being there with Riley when Riley had to go. Mm-hmm. Because it was, it's kind of like what Carl said. It's important when it's family. I would do it for you and I would want you to do it for me.
Right.
And it's like that unwritten rule. It's like you have a pact with a person. If that happens, you put me down, I'll put you down, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I think there probably was a moment where they both had to do the whole, if I go first, shoot me. If you go first, I'll shoot you, like that thing. And I think she's going through all of those emotions at the top of the stairs, and that's what compels her to stay. And to look for a solution. So for her, for her and Riley, it was the fact that Riley got bit in the absolute furthest extreme possible. So you have to assume they had probably about, what did the chart say, about 12 hours?
12 hours, maybe yeah.
Together, give or take. And so let's assume they had like around then, like about 10 to 12 hours. And so she's looking for something that will give her at least 10 to 12 hours with Joel as well and give him a fighting chance. But you and I talked before we started about were we already recording when we talked about the thread? I think the thread is a great thing for her to find. Yeah. That it's not like she found like, some weird stash of gauze pads or something. It's like someone would have taken those.
Yeah.
But someone wouldn't have taken a spool of thread and a simple needle. Right. And it may help. It may save him, it may not. It may just extend his time, but she's determined to do something.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I'm literally getting choked up thinking about it. When she comes back downstairs and she and he clutch hands, and he physically clenches her hand, and you can see there's a tear for him.
Oh yeah, he's crying. Yeah.
Amazing. And there isn't a word said to each other.
No.
And she just takes out the thread. She takes his blanket and his, the piece of fabric he has over his wound, pulls it aside, takes a deep breath, and she just starts going. And he like bites his lip and he's in pain, but he knows that she's just trying to help, and he accepts the help.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to die. And he wants to help her, and he wants to spend more time with her. She's important to him, and he's important to her. And it was just, it was so beautiful. It was so well done. So well done.
And you also get the sense too that this time around Ellie is thinking, well, I could save him.
Yes, I couldn't save Riley.
Right, yeah. Riley was doomed. There was no way to save her, and yet here, he's dying, but it's not inevitable. It's not written in stone. I could change that outcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that moment when they clasp hands, and you can see the tear running down Joel's face. It's unbelievably tender. And then, again, they have that moment for just a second, and then Ellie's like, yep, time to go to work.
Time to go to work,
and stitch him up. And, and again, part of my brain is going, oh, my God, that's so unsterile. But then again, he's lying in like an unfinished basement. You know what I mean? It's everything around him is unsterile, so. But and that might come into play later on, because like I said, when in the game, the next chapter starts, she's hunting the deer. She's also like on the lookout for medical stuff for him, but it's not like super critical. Like, oh my God, he could die at any minute. I think it's more of like, I need stuff to make sure he doesn't get infected or what, you know what I mean? Like that kind of like more like recovery stuff than save your life stuff. So.
Yes. Which is good. That's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, and the big thing is, if you think about it, where he was hit, it's in that nebulous, like it's a really good TV shot because
God, yeah.
it looks like he's not near bowel, he's not near kidney, kidneys, he's
kidney,
not far enough
liver.
back. Yeah.
And it's
So it
not
looks
near
like
the spine because it's near the edge.
Yep. So it looks like he missed most of the organs, so it's mostly just a huge puncture wound, really.
Right.
And it's just bleeding they have to worry about. So if she can get him stitched up nice and tight, then that will help a lot.
Yeah, and also it's not near like any major arteries, and you know what I mean. So yeah, you're right. It's mostly just a superficial puncture wound. Granted, it's several inches deep, but it's not. Yeah, you're right. And that thought kind of crossed my head too. It's like when she starts doing it, I'm like, wow, you're just gonna stitch up the outside. You're not gonna like stitch up in the inside. But I'm like, maybe anything got hit, and maybe she just doesn't know any better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly he kind of got that sort of Hollywood wound.
Yes.
Right. That it looks bad, but it's really not,
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's just a flesh wound. It's getting better.
No, it's not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've got nothing left on my list. Is there anything on your list you want to make sure we hit before we take our break?
Yeah, just a couple things. Like I said, this episode is so great at callbacks to the game, to the Left Behind game. But there are some differences. Like I said, the Left Behind game is really two stories going on at once that you're playing. One is Ellie running around the shopping mall by herself trying to find medical stuff for Joel. And then, like I said, you play a little bit of that, and then it jumps to the Riley story where they're in the mall, and you play, like I said, you do the thing with the Mortal Kombat game. There are other quote unquote games you play with Riley throughout that if you win or lose doesn't affect the story. They're just things to do because it's a game, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if you remember in the show when they're going through the building, they find the dead guy.
Yep.
And he has that like bottle, and you probably know what it is because you were the Binny's gal. But it's like clearly like real bourbon from the before time.
Yeah.
And then Ellie's comment is like, this must have cost this guy every ration card he had. And then Riley's like, you think he would know better than to take all those pills and drink. And then Ellie's like, oh, I think he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that's how they get the alcohol that they are drinking then. Well, in the game, in the mall, there's like a Fedra tent set up. And there was some officer that was in there that both of them knew from the school who had died. And when they go through his this is the tent where he was stationed or whatever. They go through his stuff. That's where you find the liquor in the game.
Yeah.
So that's a little different. And then the sequence in the game is different than in the show. Because in the sequence in the game, the very first wonder you go to is the Halloween store. Which is different, obviously. And then you go to the merry-go-round, and then you do the picture booth, and then you do the video games, and then after the video games, you go to this, like, I don't know, like an electronics store or something, and Riley and you have a squirt gun fight where you're like hunting each other with these like super soaker squirt guns, and when you finish that game, that's when Riley takes your Walkman and she plugs it into a stereo in this electronics store, and the same Ella James song, I Got You Babe, plays, which was great. And that's when you get up on the glass counters and dance without somehow breaking them, which really worried me that they were going to go right through those counters and cut themselves up and die. But and Ellie's like jumping on that one. I'm like, should you really be doing that? But anyway, and it's when you're there in that sequence, that's when it's not one clicker. It's like a whole bunch of infected show up, and you have to run for your life, and you're like just about out of the mall, and that's when you both get bit, and it's a little bit different. But again, game, right? It's just the way it is. And then the other thing I wanted to say was at one point they do a close-up of a movie poster in the mall, and it's called Dawn of the Wolf.
Great title.
Which is a great title. Completely, obviously made up, but totally out of the game. And Dawn of the Wolf is in a lot of places in the game. Apparently, it was a big movie in the game. So you see that poster a lot, which is really fun. And then the other thing, and this was like a total deep dive Easter egg, when in the show, when they pull out of the arcade and they go into the doll store and you see the clicker kind of glued to the wall, right? That's a callback to the Left Behind game, but it's the Ellie in the modern day mall, like when she's running around looking for stuff for Joel, because she finds this. The first thing you come up to is you find a pharmacy, and there's nothing in it, but there's a like a fire door that's locked. And clearly that's where, like, inside, that's where they keep a lot of their narcotics and stuff. So it's, can't be stolen. And then you find a note that someone wrote back during the fall that says, hey, the pharmacist started attacking people, so we locked him in this doll store that's a couple of stores down. And so if you find this and you're with Fedra, and you have doctors, go help him or something like that, right? And it has the combination for the lock to the doll store. Yeah. And it's one of those things where you come up to the doll store and you can look at the lock, but like Ellie be like, I don't know the combination, because you haven't found that note yet, right? But then you go back in and you open the doll store, and the doll store looks exactly like the doll store that this clicker is in. And so and literally the pharmacist is glued to the wall in the back of the store, but he's dead. He's not alive anymore. But so that was a direct callback to that moment. I thought, wow, that was really cool that they kind of acknowledged that other storyline that totally didn't make it into the TV show at all. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah. But yeah, so much from this episode were direct pulls, and you have to think that comes straight out of Druckmann.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes total sense that they would have him write this anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, great episode. Again, like you said, tense in parts for different reasons, but definitely tense. And just the wonderment of Elliot seeing all that stuff, and then the tenderness between those two characters was, again, just like the Bill and Frank story. It felt real.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, which is funny to say in a show about the end of the world, but yeah, it did. It felt real.
but that's really good, because that's the stuff that makes everything feel not like science fiction, but like reality. Like this could happen, and that's what makes it so poignant. Walking Dead did that to a degree, where they pulled you in with these characters and these storylines, and they made it more about the people and less about the circumstances they were in, so that's similar idea. So
it's like very real people in a completely unreal world
circumstance. Exactly. Yeah. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss our listener feedback and what's coming up next on the podcast.
All right, so stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man on bed and he's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic
over.
Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiences, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from DriveThruRPG.com or ToxicBag.com.
Hey, this is Patricia Tallman, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. Don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work, and I should know.
Hey, everybody, we're back. We're going to go ahead and jump straight into our listener feedback. We got a lot of really great feedback this week. Steve, why don't you start this week?
All right. Well, I'm happy to jump off in our feedback, and our first bit comes via the email from our pal Amelia from Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique podcast. What's up, Amelia?
Hey, Amelia. I love Amelia's emails.
Oh yeah, they're so great. They're so great, and this one especially. So yeah, I'm very.
She does not disappoint, folks.
No, not at all. And yeah, everyone, if you get a chance, give a listen to their podcast, because it is an experience.
Yes.
I think a very pleasant one. I think you'll like it. So it's very eclectic, but a lot of fun. All right,
especially if you've been. I was gonna say, if you've been listening to her feedback, you get an idea of the the kind of stuff they always talk about. So yes. Anyway, back to you.
All right. So she starts out by saying, watched episode 6 a couple more times, as well as rewatching several other episodes. And Ellie telling Joel so many times that she can't do this without him started to take on another level of meaning. Joel keeping Ellie at an emotional distance to not get attached to her by seeing her as a second chance at having a daughter not only keeps him acting coldly to her for a long time, such as calling her cargo when she asks if she's family, is demonstrated by him refusing to teach her how to do things to protect herself. He sees his job as her protector, to get her from point A to point B without a scratch. But if he would allow himself to care for her as a parental figure even a little bit, he would see his role to show her how to protect herself. She's desperate to be taught from the minute they leave Boston, and he won't let her touch any weapons or do anything for herself. Her role is to be quiet and not touch anything.
Yes.
And he is to transport her safely. She asks him all the time, will you show me how to do that? No. Can I have one? No. In episode 6, she even asked Tommy if he could teach her stuff, and Joel butts in, no. Tommy's about to be a father, and he probably would have loved to show Ellie how to do some stuff, but alas, Joel is the, quote-unquote party pooper.
Oh, yeah.
And the scene where Joel could have fallen asleep and Ellie probably told him she took second watch and she did everything right. Joel could have been impressed that she learned all that, especially after he refused to actually teach her anything. He, air quotes, showed her by doing it every night, and she learned by watching him. And he's lucky she's so smart and capable. But instead, he got angry about it and told her that she was wrong for not waking him up. The man is terrified that he's losing it, that his health is failing, that he is failing, and that he's going to fail Ellie. And that is absolutely true. And by extension, Sarah. And even though asking for help is the hardest thing in the world, oh God, I relate so hard with this part of him, the need to succeed at all times and never ask for help, he would rather ask Tommy to take over for him than to focus on making Ellie ready to possibly get there on her own if he should drop dead along the way. And I think that is super insightful into Joel's psyche, right? That fear of failing again.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Is just terrifying him, right? To the point where he was physically having, episodes, right?
Yes.
It was that weighing that much on him. So then she goes on to say, and that's why the scene of him showing her how to shoot the rifle hits so perfectly, because after so much no, he's finally, come here, let me show you something, which is how a father would act. And almost as soon as he finally starts to act like a father figure, bam, right in the gut. Which takes us to episode 7, and he's using his last bit of energy begging her to just leave him. Who is cutting those onions? all in caps, but yeah, right. That tear running down his face is you're just like, even my cold dead heart went, aw. And then she finishes up by saying, I knew just enough going in that Riley was Ellie's BFF and that she died to know that this episode was definitely going to destroy me like they all destroy me. And once again, they gave me a new character to fall in love with whose death would hurt like whoa. But more than anything, I loved how they used the flashback to give Ellie strength and the drive to tear the house apart, looking for whatever it was going to take to help Joel and interlocking her fingers with his. Aw, we got you, Daddy. Come back to us. And that's how she ends it. And yeah, again, you're spot on. I mean, so many of those things that you touched on, we touched on a little bit in our last little discussion there. So yeah, Amazing feedback. I love it.
Awesome. Aw, love it. All right. So thanks again for your feedback, Amelia. We love you. Next up, we've got an email from my friend and yours, Lisa Dupre.
Hello, Lisa.
It's Lisa. And Lisa says, hello, with about 10 hellos, which is awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Lisa says, my biggest takeaway from this episode is that I am totally jealous of queer kids today. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, our representation was awful. It was all older, rich, white, gay men dealing with AIDS, women who were, quote unquote, best friends, but you could only guess they were gay, i.e. fried green tomatoes. Right? Am I right?
Yeah.
If I could just tell you that in college, the times that Lisa and I would debate how fucking terrible some of the lesbian things we had available to us were. Anyway, so i.e. fried green tomatoes, or lesbians who were totally gay, but at least one of them would kill herself. The closest thing I had to a positive role model I can remember was Paul Lynde on Hollywood Squares. And she says, Google it, Gen Z. I do not have time to explain how fabulous he was. I mean, I grew up at a time when people thought Rosie O'Donnell was straight.
Wait, she's not?
I have some articles to share with you.
Okay.
So she goes on to say, kids today, though, they've got queer representation showing up all the time and in such an amazing variety of characters. There are 5 queer characters on Star Trek Discovery. 5! If you told me that back when The Next Generation was premiering, my heart would have exploded. Ellie and Riley are incredible. They're so cool and sweet and real. Watching them trying to navigate their feelings for each other while dealing with these massive real-world forces against them was inspiring and heartbreaking. It's also very pleasing that Ellie's core of strength, that thing that makes her keep going even when the adults around her are giving up, comes from something other than trauma. I'd sort of been assuming that she was tough because some part of her was broken, not unlike Joel. But it turns out that it's deeper than that because it comes from love. The moment where Ellie takes Joel's hand, and it's an extension of the promise she made with Riley to keep going as long as you're still alive. Honestly, it made me think about my own life and whether I'm trying hard enough. Love and kisses, Lisa Dupree. Well, she just made me tear up a little bit. Man.
She did me too.
Goodness. Good job. Well, she is a writer, so she does know how to turn a phrase.
She does.
She continues to say, P.S. I was not surprised that in a post-apocalyptic world, kids would go back to using Walkmans. Those things were crazy heavy when you clipped them on. Kind of surprised Ellie could keep her sweatpants from falling, frankly. But if you had enough double A's, they ran forever. Isn't that the truth? Remember
the only thing you had? Yeah.
No, I was going to say, remember what it was like when your batteries would start to fail and your tape would run slow?
Your tape would run slow, and I was just going to say, the only thing you had to watch out for was when the battery started to run out, the Walkman could eat the tape.
Yes, so you had to be very careful. You didn't want that to happen.
Very careful. Yep.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I
remember we would use pencils to rewind the cassette so we didn't burn the battery.
Yep.
Power to rewind back in the day. So, and again, for all you Gen Zers, Google it. It was a thing.
Yeah, every now and then that image shows up on Facebook where it'll show a cassette tape and a pencil just next to each other, and it'll say there's a big it'll say something like, if you understand why these things go together, you need to schedule your colonoscopy now.
Immediately, yes. Yeah, right. It was funny. I was listening to the Dolls of Horror on one of their podcasts either last week or this week. I can't remember which one, but they mentioned the VHS rewinders.
Yes, I remember those.
Do you remember those?
Yes.
Where it's like literally you rather than using your VCR to rewind the machine, which will wear out that equipment
motor
faster, they sold these little devices that you'd put the tape in and it would just fast rewind the tape for you. It was, again, it's amazing. It's like, really? You had to do that. You know?
Please be kind. Rewind,
right? That was the Blockbuster slogan. Yeah. Oh my God. But Lisa, amazing feedback.
Yes, as always. Right. Stabs right through the heart, but in such a beautiful way. Thank you so much.
It really does. Really does. All right. Moving on. We go to this is our pal across the pond.
Yes.
In England. This is from
Jolly
Bev
old
too.
England. Yeah.
That's right. Hello, Bev. How are you?
Hello, Bev.
Hopefully the weather is treating you well over there. It's kind of been all over the place here, but hopefully you are experiencing that lovely English weather.
Yes.
And she sent this via email. She says, "Hi guys, hope you're both well and that this reaches you before you go to record."
Look how that worked
At first and it did. It did. You made it, Bev. She goes, "At first I wasn't sure what I made of this episode. I thought it was good, but didn't have the power that the others had. Now that I've let it sit in my brain for 24 hours, I think it does pack the punch that we're used to feeling. Ellie has been left behind by people she loves and has lost so much that we needed to see more of her backstory to understand what she's been through. Without seeing how much she cared for her friend, we would have less of an understanding why it is that she can't leave Joel. She finally has someone who has chosen her over everything else, and that's something so monumental for Ellie that it can't just be, air quote, left behind." Yet another great episode, but hopefully there'll be a bit more Joel in the next one. Cheers, Bev. Yeah. I don't want to be accused of spoilers on that, so I am saying nothing about what's coming. I'm not.
Zip it, Baldwin.
Yep, nothing. I don't want an angry Lisa Dupree letter coming. So no, I know nothing.
Because it will. She will.
It will. Oh, yeah. She will. Yeah, she totally
absolutely.
will. But
without fail.
Bev, I think we are right there with you that the glimpse into Ellie and her journey and all of the crud that has been shoveled onto her.
Yes.
Emotionally, just living in this world has to be almost, heartbreaking and impossible. And then when you have to endure all the crap that she's had to endure, you really understand. Like you had said, Dee, a little earlier. Now we understand why she acts the way she does in the beginning.
Yep.
Right?
Oh,
we have a little bit more insight of like, oh yeah, okay. The reason why she's a smartass is that, what's the point of making friends with people and trying to establish relationships with people, because everybody you meet that you start to like goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's spot on.
Yeah. I just also want to state for the record, I didn't include it in written form, but Bev did reach out via social medias, and she did tell me that if I do feel the need, or you, to slip into any type of English accent when we're reading her feedback, that it's okay. She would not be offended by that. So, cheerio.
What's all this then?
That was great.
Hey, that's like 40 years of watching Monty Python. That's all the training I need, baby.
Yeah, I totally get it. Thanks again for writing in, Bev. I'm glad that you did make it in before we recorded. So great.
Yeah.
Next up, we had some Facebook feedback from our pal Karen Cohen. Hey, Karen.
Hello, Karen.
Karen says, like the rest, this episode was great and kept me on edge since we know she was bit at the mall, so I was just waiting for it. What I really want to see, and what is probably so heartbreaking, is what came next for those two. Did Riley turn and Ellie have to put her down, or did old lady Marlene do it? That was great. In college, at 18, I thought this 25-year-old woman I played volleyball with was old. Goes to show how teens view people older than them when you don't have much reference, and any adult seems old. The reaction Ellie had when she realized she had been bitten was so good. For me, right on point when she was screaming and breaking the glass. Oh, man. I just thought it was great. Sometimes I think that the same person who writes Ellie's lines is the person who wrote Abraham's lines from The Walking Dead, just because they are so quick and smart. By the way, just wanted to mention that when I actually have to complain about something, which is rare, I make up a fake name. Cheers. And I totally get that. If I was named Karen, I would do the same thing when I go do things like that. Karen wrote a little follow-up on her feedback, and she says, I just put it together that Riley is probably the person Ellie killed and doesn't want to talk about waiting to see what you guys think. I responded and I said that I agreed with her, that I think that that's what it is, and we just had that whole conversation about it. So
yeah, we do. And one thing that just occurred to me when we were on the break, when in episode 2, when Ellie's talking to Tess about she went into the mall, and Tess is like, you mean the mall that no one's supposed to go in because you'll get instantly killed? And she's like, yeah, I went in there. And then I believe Tess goes, did you go in alone? And Ellie kind of has this weird look and goes, yeah, I was by myself. If you remember that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And now that we've seen this story, that just to me is more evidence that she had to put down Riley, and that she doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't even want to acknowledge that Riley was there. It's just not a place she wants to go to. So I think you're dead on, Karen. I think you're absolutely right.
Yep. And I know what you're saying. You want to see what comes next. And I kind of do too, but I wonder if we're never going to get it, because I think at this point, like you said, it's a lot of people are going to put that together, and it's less about what actually happened, and isn't it more frightening for us to try and picture what it would have been like for her to do it? You know, rather than doing the actually showing. And think about it. They've actually been doing a lot of really good work with not showing stuff, with giving you just like a little tease or a little, I know it's not the same thing, but I really, really thought like this is an HBO show and they're allowed to really sort of show and do anything in a lot of ways. And I think a lesser TV show, this is going to sound a little crass, but I think a lesser TV show would have shown Ellie changing out of her pants, because she made a big deal about having Riley look away.
Turn around, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so any other show probably would have done the long shot across the room, but they didn't. No. Because it wasn't, and ultimately, yes, showing a 14-year, I mean, I know that Bella Ramsey in real life is 18 when they filmed this, 18, 19, but showing a 14-year-old changing out of her pants is not something people need to see anyway. But my point is, the emotional vulnerability of that moment, some people would have been the lesser filmmaker or television maker and have shown that. And I think it has more weight that they didn't show it. It's almost like she was sort of bending down out of frame and you couldn't see, she pulled her, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what they're doing with all these moments of, that have, we didn't see Henry shoot himself. We saw Ellie's reaction, Right. So I think that
we didn't see Joel kill Brian.
Yes. We just saw her with the sounds and she was in the other room, yada, yada. It's exactly the same. So I'm curious if they've given us all of the little seeds to tell us that Ellie's the one that puts Riley down, and they don't have to show it to us, because the things that we would imagine in our heads, just like all these other scenes, are that much more frightening.
Oh yeah.
And they have other stuff to do. Part of me does want to see that scene, but I totally think we're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Because they've already shown this filming style of less is more, having you imagine things, etc. So, but yes, I do think that she's the one that puts Riley down. I think that makes the most sense. Yeah. You know.
I agree, and yeah, you're right. As great as Hollywood, the effects departments are getting, and they're improving all the time, and they have all the technology to help them, they will never, ever, 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 ever be able to beat the human imagination.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, no matter what they can think up and do, what is in your brain of what it could be is infinitely scarier, worse, whatever. And so and you're right. My feeling is at best she might talk about it to Joel at some point.
Yes.
But I do not. I'm right there in your camp. I do not believe we will see that character again and see that scene. Yeah, I think that Riley is just going to live on in Ellie's memory now. So.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Right. Thanks so much for writing in, Karen. Your stuff has always got a little funny tinge to it. I love that. And
so I'm just wondering, does that mean, Karen, that if you ever don't like one of our podcasts, you're gonna sign it like Jill Cohen or something? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't care for your podcast this week. Signed Karen. I mean Jill
Cohen. Maybe she'll sign it Lauren Cohen.
So now I'm Lauren, bitches.
That's right. take it all in. Yeah.
Yeah, after you make those bad jokes for so many weeks.
That's awesome. All right, thank you so much, Karen, for writing. That's awesome. All right, so moving on. This came via the Facebook, and this is from our pal Alma Contreras.
Hey, Alma.
Hello, Alma. What's going on? Although reading the feedback, I'm guessing not quite as positive reaction for you here. She says, I'm a little torn about this episode. I like the two girls having their time together, but this episode felt slow. I was a little on edge, expecting the infected around every corner at any moment, that when the dude, and I'm thinking she's referring to the clicker, finally showed, it felt a little underwhelming. And then she has a couple of emoji faces and symbols there. So okay, Alma, so this episode didn't quite hit you, I think, the same way it did for us. But I can see that argument, because you're right. They, the storytellers, we already knew Ellie gets bit, right? We already knew that it happened in the mall when, we already knew she was there with a friend. So this wasn't a what's going to happen next kind of an episode. I think if anything, the suspense kicked in with what you said, where you're like expecting it at any second, and when is it going to happen? Not is it going to happen, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, that's a totally valid viewpoint there, that it was definitely a slower episode, and not super surprising, because again, we kind of already knew Ellie's story. Now we're just getting a chance to kind of experience it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I enjoyed was that they took the time and slowed down. So I absolutely admit that this was a slower episode, and I can see how that could not appeal to people. So I'm not surprised. And actually, I remember when I was looking up something for IMDb for this episode, like the description or something, or looking for the title for the next one. This is one of the lower rated ones by users on. I mean, it's still like a 7 something, which is fantastic for a TV show, but it's one of the lowest rated episodes out of the ones that have shown so far on IMDb. Maybe that will pop back up again. But, maybe a lot of people, like we've said before on other shows, that, you want the action, you want the suspense, but if it doesn't pay off to you, then, and then it doesn't pay off. So it didn't pay off for Alma. Sorry, man. Looks like next week's going to be a little more exciting, though. So hold on to your hat. So thanks for writing in, though, Alma. Whether absolutely. You agree with us or don't, we want to hear from you.
No, that to keep the conversation going, And again, it just if it didn't hit you, it didn't hit you. But the best part is, if you're going to write in, do like Alma just did and say why.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
And we can talk about it, and everybody can feel better.
Yeah, we can talk. We'll talk you through it. We'll get through this together. Next up, right in under the wire, Alex Baelish sent in an email. Hey,
Alex, come on, buddy, you got to do better than that, man.
I know. What if we were podcasting on Mondays like normal?
Woo.
Day late and a dollar short, Baelish. I'm just totally kidding with you, Alex. Alex writes in and says, hey, Diana and Steve, I love the backstory and the Easter eggs of all the callbacks to the arcade and to the mall. Agreed.
Yep.
And he says, I love how they take one episode and really dive into a relationship the way they did. Still very few infected in the show, but when they do have them, it's pretty amazing how it has such an impact. I don't know if Joel's going to live or die, because I don't know if there's any plot armor in the show, but it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. I just love how they make it so much like a game in terms of how they build up to that event. I also love how Ellie has family ties to Joel no matter what. And I'm pretty sure Alex works in the medical field, so I'm not surprised. He writes, on a medical note, I know it's really cool that she stitched him up without any sedative or painkiller, but I don't know if that's going to work, just plugging the skin up like that will. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. So yeah, we're not sure about it either, but we'll give him a little bit of a pass, because he was it's a Hollywood injury. Don't forget that, Alex. It's in the midsection region, in the non-colon, non-major organ region. So It's mostly just a flesh wound, as our pals Monty Python would say.
Exactly.
So she just mostly has to stitch the flesh back together again and
mostly
and keep it clean, man. Keep it infection free. So we'll see if that happens. And he has to stay still so that he doesn't bust his stitches, because they're not made out of fishing line or anything.
Right.
They're made out of like really
thread. They're
just regular thread, which will just pop.
Right.
So
right.
that's going to be fun to watch.
You would think that the huge issue in all of these apocalyptic things, when not necessarily that the monster bites you and you're going to turn into a monster, but if you just have any kind of superficial wound, the chances it's going to get infected must you get sepsis. You can die from that super easy, right? And
go ahead.
I was going to say, the access to basic things like hot water and soap are not there anymore, right?
Yep. And
everything you're touching and handing is, crappy and full of germs, and you know what I mean? It's just the world that they're in right now is just so not clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like they're washing their hands every day,
No.
Using antibacterial soap or whatever.
Yeah, right. I mean, Ellie, she makes no attempt to sterilize the needle. She makes no attempt to do anything with the thread. I mean, she just stitches him up, which is great in the short term because she needs to do it. But you're just asking for him to get infected. It'd be surprising if he doesn't come down with some kind of infection. So I mean, it's you're right. You would think that it would be something that they would need to think about a little bit, because my God, sepsis. Oh, you're dead. Sorry.
Hopefully, since she was just starting the sewing, hopefully they will address a little bit of this medical anomaly in next week's episode. So we'll see.
Yeah. I guess I can point out that in the video game of Left Behind, the whole goal, and she's looking for stuff. She finds this medical helicopter's crashed into the roof of the mall, and she's trying to find a way up there because it's got the medical symbol on it. So she's like, maybe there's some stuff in there. Yeah. And when you finally get up there, you find a medical kit, and she has the curved needle that they use in the ORs and stuff to sew up skin, because it's easier to get through the skin than a straight one like she has in the show. And thread, and then she finds some gauze and some other stuff too, and she then takes that back to Joel. And when you finally fight through all the guys to get back to him, the very last scene is her stitching him up just like in the show. So nice. You do get to actually see that in the game. So yeah.
Nice. Sounds awesome. Thanks for writing in, Alex. As always, we love to hear from you, even though it was just under the wire. Just
pretty close, man.
Pretty close. Let me tell you. Yeah. I was going to say, I think about that, like the infection stuff, pretty much every time I have something remotely superficial, like say, like a hangnail that gets a little infected. You have a tiny little bit of like, gross. I use you put a little peroxide, you clean it up, you do whatever. And it's this tiny little spot on your finger. And every time something like that happens for me, and I put a little Neosporin on it or whatever, I'm like, this would kill me in the apocalypse. I would die. Not right away, but eventually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
and you have to figure by, 20 years in, there aren't too many bottles of hydrogen peroxide anymore.
No, not at all. And then you've got to hope, like, I can go down to the stream and rinse my hand and try and get it as clean as possible. But how clean is the stream?
Right. Yeah. If you have a pot, you could put some of this water in the stream and then boil it. But again, do you have all that equipment? Do you have the time? There's so many things that, the out in the wilderness like that, there are so many like little teeny things that could easily kill you that we don't really think about because we don't live out there.
Yeah, this is the reason why people had such a low lifespan in like the Middle Ages.
Right, yeah. They died they lived to be like 10 and that was it,
They were like 25, it's a ripe old age.
I did like that in the feedback about I think it was Karen that talked about the old people, and I did like that in the show when Ellie asked about Marlene, and Riley's like, she's like 40 or 50, and then she goes, old.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, that hurt my heart.
But you know, it's so true, because like when I was a kid, anyone that was like 2 or 3 years older to me, I thought was ancient.
Yeah, anybody over like 25 was.
Yeah, oh my God. But what can think about it? That's like, you know, when you're like 10, that's, you know, twice as long as you've been alive. When you're like, you know, 5, oh my God, you know, it's, you know, that's like 5 times as long. You can't even process that, you know. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I did like that comment that she made about that.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, so what's coming up next on the podcast? Well, next week we will be discussing episode 8, which is, title of the episode is When We Are in Need, you know, like of medical supplies. And all we've got so far, no real description of the episode, but we did get some clips, and it looks like Ellie runs into another group. They don't seem as friendly as Tommy's group. They show a lot of guns. There's some shooting. It seems a little adversarial. So that looks like there's going to be a little bit more action and excitement. So I'm curious, especially with all of your buildup that you've been giving. I'm very curious to see how it's going to go.
I'm saying nothing.
I say nothing.
I know nothing. The only thing I will tell you, and this is a little Easter egg, is that one of the characters that she's going to run into next week is this actor named Troy Baker.
Yep.
And I don't know if he's the main guy or one of the other guys, but anyway, he's in there. And Troy Baker is the actor who provided the voice of Joel in the video game.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know. He does the
podcast, right?
He does the official HBO podcast too, which I think is really cool. I love how they got people involved who were a part of the game. I mean, that game is just so, it's just so well known in the gaming community. It's nice that they've sort of given back to the voice actors that were a part of it. I think that's wonderful.
I do too.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have to bite your tongue for longer than you normally do, because we will be recording a couple of days late next week. Steve is going to sunny Florida for a little R&R. And
80s and sunny every day is the forecast. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, whatever. So we'll be recording on Thursday, I think we said.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. Yeah, so
the
a
plan
couple days
right now
later than normal.
Yeah, so we'll be so I will make sure when we send out our feedback things, send it right after the show. As you're seeing it, clearly this gives you plenty of time, Alex, so there's no excuses. I better get an email is what I'm saying. You'll have a full 2 extra days.
That's good. Just threaten our listeners. That's a real good plan. I like that.
Alex knows. He knows. He's fine. But yes, I will make sure to remind you folks that you send your feedback in right away, but it will take a couple extra days for us to get the podcast out to you. Anyway, so that's the podcast itself. And speaking of us on the podcast, we are gonna have a little bit of downtime in between when Last of Us ends. We've only got a couple weeks left because there's only 9 episodes in the series. I'm not sure how I feel about an odd number like that. It makes my teeth itch a little bit, but whatever. So 2 more weeks left, which sounds crazy. Doesn't it feel like it just started?
Oh, God, it does. Yeah. It's flying by.
It totally flew. So when it ends, we're going to have, I think we said it's going to work out to be about 6 weeks or so, 6 or 7 weeks before Fear the Walking Dead starts. So we're just curious if there's a short series that you've watched recently, something that's like 6 episodes or something. Is there a recent movie that you've watched that you'd love to hear our take on it? Is there a classic movie that we haven't covered yet that you think we should cover? Think back to our catalog. There's plenty of stuff we've done already, but there's plenty of things haven't done. We've got a couple of ideas sort of like rolling around in the brain. that we may do, we may not do, but we're, so we've got some stuff set in our head just in case we don't get any ideas from you guys. But by all means, if you've got something and you haven't seen anyone cover it on a podcast, as there's something out there, please let us know. We'd love to cover something different, whatever it may be.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so let us know. I'll put some posts out on social media to remind you guys. Give us your feedback on what you think we should cover next, whatever that may be. And we want to just give a shout out to our pals. We talk about them a couple of times here and there, and I'm sure you've heard our ad for our pals, Summer and Jamie, who have the Dolls of Horror podcast, and their podcast is just so much fun to listen to. And the ladies had a little bit of a change in their world, and they're going to be changing up their producers, and we're hoping that it won't give them any downtime, but they're going to be changing up their ad that they do for us and some stuff like that. So we just wanted to remind people to give them a listen if you've got time. They are so much fun. Those ladies really, really bring it when they do their podcast. So just want to give those ladies a quick shout out and
yeah, absolutely.
Give them a big recommendation. You guys should go listen if you haven't yet.
It's a lot of fun. The most recent episode, they covered the film Basket Case. They're kind of all over the map of horror, and it could be a movie from the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, at any point. They tend to stay away from brand new stuff. It's much more, no, this is something that you can watch streaming or online somewhere, or you own it on DVD or whatever. But I love those two. They're a lot of fun. They're very good together, and they have a really cool format and rapport on their show. It's super fun, and so it's going to be interesting to see when the new producer comes in, how much is going to change, and so on. They record a lot in advance, so if you were to listen right away, you probably won't hear the new changes for a while because they probably have 3 or 4 episodes in the can waiting to be released. So. But it's coming, and we're definitely fingers are crossed, and we're sending good vibes. And if you're not listening to them, you should subscribe to them today, and they can be found wherever your podcasts live.
Yeah. Summer and Jamie have also done lots of hosting of panels and discussions with actors and horror folks at the Days of the Dead conventions.
Yeah, they're the official hosts for that series. So
So some of their
flies
podcasts
around the country and goes all over the place, and
she just got back from Vegas. Was the most recent Days of the Dead, I think.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because of her view from the hotel, which was great. They will at times release like those panels as part of their podcast on their Facebook page. They've got such a great archive of conversations I've had with people, from like the smallest, part from a tiny horror movie to like, these crazy famous people and whatever. It's funny with the current situation with, unfortunately, with the actor Julian Sands, who is still currently missing.
Yeah.
I know this sounds crazy, but every time that I see an article or a mention of him recently, I think of those gals because their most recent Days of the Dead we went to, they interviewed Julian Sands, and he was delightful.
Oh, it was amazing.
He's such a great guy, and I just I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Such a lovely, lovely, lovely person. So it just makes me think of them, and those ladies are really great interviewers, and they have a lot of fun at their panels. So we just love them dearly. So we're wishing them all the best.
I believe that Julian Sands panel in Chicago, they have released that one, so it is in their archives. And And it's great. It is
great
amazing. And it's funny because you can hear both you and me in it laughing in the audience, which is
Shut
funny.
up.
Shut up. And then I believe when Summer got back, they just released a panel that she did with Tom Savini in Las Vegas. So
yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun, I bet.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're wishing those ladies all the best as they reboot and sort of get ready for sort of a refresh for the podcast. So give them a listen, give them a follow. I'm sure they would love it. They're really great, always engaged, lots of great content. They're a lot of fun. So
and they're just really nice people. They're adorable.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
absolutely.
We love them. So that's going to do it for us this week, guys. Another nice, long conversation about a TV show that was only 55 minutes long.
But we love it.
We love it, and we're so glad you guys come along with us every week as we jibber jabber for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So
or 2.5, whatever.
Whatever. Shh, hush. So we look forward to chatting with you next week. And as always, until then, I am Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they just don't work. So, Diana, if people want to get in touch with us, how would they go about doing that?
There are some great ways to connect with us online and leave us your comments and feedback. So to send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is at AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. The best way to keep in touch with us is to like our Facebook page. Head to facebook.com/aimfortheheadpodcast to get all of our updates in your feed.
Of course I don't have my email open. Why would I? Stupid Diana.
Hey, now you go easy on yourself. That's my job to point out your stupidness.